It is an honor to introduce to you this evening Very Reverend Dr. Ivan Kaszczak. Father Ivan is visiting us from New York, where he's currently pastor at Holy Trinity Ukrainian Catholic Church in Kyrgyzstan. Since being ordained deacon in 1984 and priest in 1985, Father Ivan served many pastorates throughout the East Coast. He has also been instrumental with spiritual leadership with the Ukrainian youth as chaplain for the Ukrainian scouting organization PLAST. Lieutenant Colonel Kaszczak also served as chaplain in our United States Air Force Reserves. Father Ivan earned many degrees in philosophy, theology, education, and in 2005 completed a PhD in religious education with honors. His many publications that are listed in your handouts have been distributed and read globally. Most recently, Dr. Kaszczak published Metropolitan Andrey Sheptytsky and the Establishment of the Ukrainian Catholic Church in the United States. This book is available for purchase tonight, and Dr. Kaszczak has graciously agreed to sign copies for our guests.
Мені припала велика честь представити вам преподобного отця доктора Івана Кaszczaka. Отець Іван приїхав до нас з Нью-Йорку, де він є парохом в Українській католицькій церкві Святої Трійці в Кyrgyzstan. З часу висвячення на діакона в 1984 році і на священника в 1985 році отець Іван служив в багатьох церквах Східного побережжя. Також він відіграє важливу роль в духовному проводі української молоді, будучи капеляном пласту. Маючи військове звання підполковник, отець Kaszczak також служив капеляном для резервних військ повітряних сил США. Отець Іван дістав багато дипломів з філософії, теології, освіти і у 2005 році захистив свій докторат з релігійної освіти з відзнакою. Його видання є розповсюджені і прочитані по цілому світі. Отця Kaszczaka книжку «Митрополит Андрей Шептицький і повстання Української католицької церкви в США» можна в нас нині придбати. Просимо отця Kaszczaka.
Дякую вам всім за увагу і за признання. Нині ми приїхали віддати честь митрополитові Шептицькому. Більшість з моєї розмови буде по-англійськи, але хочу підкреслити, що ми дали йому титул «Апостол миру». Якщо хочеш мир, треба працювати для справедливості особистої і соціологічної, щоб люди справедливості росли і цвіли. І якраз точно я буду говорити про його дбайливість, про цю справедливість. Thank you for your kind attention. I wish I was as tall as Metropolitan Sheptytsky. It would be more imposing. But hopefully you won't drift off to sleep as I speak of a great human being, a gift, not only to the Ukrainian Catholic Church, but a gift to humanity, a good human being who underlined the fact that he was not just for one people, for one religion, but for humanity. You heard that he was made servant of God today, venerable. The next step will be blessed, and the final step will be Saint Andrey Sheptytsky, an acknowledgement of his service, not for some subculture or some small part of the world, but for humanity. Let me give you this foundation. When we were in the seminary, they told us, the Our Father, the prayer of our Savior, is meant for humanity. And when you pray it and say, Our Father, and you only think of your religion or your friends, you are praying it incorrectly. Because the Lord taught that to his disciples to remind them that their job was not to build a religion or simply a community, but to serve humanity. In fact, in our liturgy of John Chrysostom that we celebrate in every Ukrainian Catholic Church, and I might add, in all the Orthodox and Catholic churches from the Byzantine tradition, We don't begin by blessing the church. We say, blessed is the kingdom. And who belongs to the kingdom? Everybody. Everybody who works for righteousness and justice and equality among people, and who cares about everyone, not because they belong to their group, to their church, but because they belong to humanity, of which we share a common Father. The second step is this. The Archbishop of Lviv, the Metropolitan, cared about social action. One of his common phrases was from the Epistle of John, how can you claim to love the God you don't see if you don't love the brother or sister that you do see? So for his spirituality, for his concept of Christian social justice, it was the only way to be a truly religious person, to be a man or a woman of God, was to care about your brother and your sister. The third and final thing is this. Sometimes people forget that he was a Basilian monk, the order of Saint Basil the Great, and he followed the teachings of Saint Basil of Caesarea in Cappadocia, present-day Turkey. One of Saint Basil's works was hospitals, which Sheptytsky emulated. Education, which Sheptytsky emulated. There is an ancient story about Saint Gregory, one of the friends of Saint Basil, when someone was saying Christians should only read the Bible. He said bluntly, they want to make us ignorant and stupid as they are so they can hide among us. Saint Basil said the Christian should be like the bumblebee, the honeybee. Go to every flower, read every work, but only take the best and grow as a human being. These little philosophical, theological underpinnings will tell you why Sheptytsky is venerated so much today. Because he looked out for everyone. He spoke in Hebrew to the Jews. And when they asked him, why do you do that? He goes, because faith comes through hearing. In the Jewish prayer, Shema Israel, hear, O Israel, your God is one. He says, I speak because I want to touch their hearts with their own language. He took care of Polish people because he came and was raised in the Latin church, in the Polish church, and he cared for them. He spoke to Armenians. He spoke to people who were not believers because he was a good human being. You cannot be a good Christian if you forget your humanity. And he also said inversely, to be a good human being, you can only become a better one if you become a Christian. Let me give you a few things of Sheptytsky. You know his mother wrote a beautiful biography. If you need a press agent, get your mother to write a book. It's gonna be good. And she called it The Youth and the Vocation of Reverend Roman Sheptytsky. And she speaks how his own father didn't want him to become a Ukrainian Catholic monk. Socially, that's a low step. When you're a count, you're approximately 6'8" tall. You look good. You got most of your teeth. You're smart. You're from a Polish noble family. Oh yes, you see the paintings on your wall of these Ukrainian Greek Catholic bishops, and you ask your parents, what are they doing there? Well, that's our family. Metropolitan Andrey Sheptytsky, who built St. George's Church, was his family. And so eventually he has a seed of a vocation, and it's his mother who says, follow the Lord. Spiritually, go where your heart leads you. And so the mother writes how difficult it was, and it was tough. At his own first Mass, his first Divine Liturgy, his mother could not receive Holy Communion from the hands of her son, who had changed rites and become a Greek Catholic, because in those days, Latin Catholics could not receive, except with special permission, communion in one of the Eastern Catholic churches. That has changed, thank God. So after the liturgy, Andrey Sheptytsky gives his mother the Latin host at his first divine liturgy. And so throughout his life, he had to deal with Ukrainians suspecting that he was too Polish, too Latin, too rich. The Poles suspecting he was too Russian, too Ukrainian, too Eastern. And he was trying to be too human, too Christian, too much following Christ. And so in the early years, he goes through various physical illnesses, which sometimes when you look at the life of a good human being, we forget simple things. Like when the Pope goes to South America, he's got to go 10,000 feet above sea level to 14,000 feet above sea level, but he only has less than one lung. We forget sometimes the physical exertion and the uncertainty about your own health that goes into someone trying to become a good human being. Well, Metropolitan Sheptytsky had to go through all that. In the last years of his life, you often see him pictured being carried around or driving in the car because he couldn't walk. He had to be carried. He finds the Ukrainian Museum in 1905. In 1903, he had established the People's Clinic, the Lvivska Narodna Lecznicza. For whom? For everyone. Not for Ukrainian Greek Catholics, but for human beings who needed physical care. This is a sign of a person who's not simply building a church, but building a kingdom. And so when you see something like saving the lives of Jews, putting at risk his own church, he follows an ancient tradition in Christian mysticism that says, better that the whole church should be destroyed than the church destroy one aspect of the Christian gospel by not being charitable. His goal was not to save an organization, but to save people. In 1906, he makes a pilgrimage for the second time to the Holy Land. At that pilgrimage, he had a widowed priest, Father Ivan Volyansky, who was the first priest who arrived in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania, arrived on the ship called the Penland, December 15th, 1884. I know that because I use Ancestry.com, for which I receive no royalty by telling you that. The first priest involved in the labor movement. When his wife died in Brazil in 1896, he returned back a person who was slightly broken but revived himself, a knower of Semitic languages. He went with Metropolitan Sheptytsky, and I have no proof, but I think he spoke about the people in Ukraine. Because Sheptytsky, from my specialization about his work outside of Ukraine, had to deal with thousands of people emigrating to Hawaii in 1895 and 1910, to South America, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Canada, the United States, Stockholm, and many other places. And although canonically, those of you who may not know, the Catholic Church in the bishop's responsibility circumscribes it by land. In other words, you are a bishop of a certain territory usually, and outside of that territory, you have no legal rights. But he had moral rights. So when he heard about the people in the Americas, he wanted to visit. And people didn't want him to visit. He was almost made a cardinal 3 times. 1911, 1914, and 1916 when he was in a Russian prison under the Tsar. And the reason the Austrian government refused to back that is, in some of the communiques, they say, this is an idealist. This is a person with principle. If he becomes a cardinal, we won't be able to stop him. Sometimes people who are not quite sharp really put the cap and hit the nail on the head. Sheptytsky was an idealist that humanity needed. And so he never became a cardinal. Before him, Cardinal Sylvester Sembrotovich, a cardinal. Julian Kulioshki was only metropolitan for a few months, didn't become a cardinal. Sheptytsky, 44 years as a metropolitan, never became a cardinal. After him, Blazenishi Stepi becomes a cardinal, Blazenishi Lubachevsky become a cardinal, Blazenishi Huzar. There's a pattern here. He was a good man who had many enemies because they didn't understand this idealist who tried to give his life not simply for the faith, but for humanity. I can list many of the things that he did, but I want to finish up with this. Oh, I still have 45 minutes, but I will spare you. Those are those nervous laughs from a crowd. He visited the United States in 1910 because he was going to a congress in Montreal, the 21st Eucharistic Congress. He had a chance, he learned English when he was 5 years old as a young boy, so he knew English to a degree. When he came here, of course, he could speak French, German, Italian, Polish, Ukrainian, and I think the list goes on. He could speak more languages than I have words. But he was a talented polyglot. He was a person of impressive credentials. He was a person of impressive size. All this adds to the fact that when a person like this walks in a room, people pay attention. And so in 1910, he arrives, he goes to America, he takes the canals from Syracuse, the Erie Canal up to Montreal. He does a lot of work and visits a lot of places. 1914, he goes back in 1910 to Austria, Lviv. He's arrested in 1904, but when he gets out, following World War I, he has to deal with orphans. And that was his trip here. Let me just give you a list of the places that he traveled from 1920 to 1923. And remember, he was a man who wasn't in great health. He had just come out of being in captivity from 1914 to 1917. In 1920, he was in Vienna in December, in Rome from December 1920 to March 1921, Belgium, Netherlands, France, and Britain from April to May of 1921, Canada from August to November of 1921, the United States, including Chicago, from November 1921 to March 1922, Brazil, Argentina from March to July of 1922, and the United States from August to November of 1922. Oh, he's not done yet. London in December of 1922, Rome in December of 1922, April to April of 1923, and finally in Belgium until July of 1923. This is not a healthy man. And what is he out there to do? To get honors, to get degrees, to just be seen and admired by people? No. He becomes the father of children who had lost parents during the war, of a peasant population in Halachina who had no country, of people who were disenfranchised, physically, emotionally hurt, because after war, all the trauma, post-traumatic stress, none of this was diagnosed, but all of it was evident. And he speaks for people and expends physical effort to bring his idea of the Christian gospel to humanity. He does this in 1922, he does this in 1923, and then he keeps on sending priests, sending letters, a phenomenal ability to write on the go. In 1910, in Yorktown, Virginia, in September. He blesses 222 acres. When I was doing research in Lviv in the National Archives, there's a postcard there. On the front is the Nelson House, which is a house from the Revolutionary War. And on the back it says, Metropolitan Sheptytsky нині я поблагословив землю для першої української семінарії в Америці. Today I blessed the land for the first seminary in the United States. Once again, his concern for real people, taking real action, making sure people were fed, taken care of spiritually, taken care of intellectually, taken care of socially. So he uses his wide knowledge, not simply for himself, because the idea of gift and chosenness in the Christian gospel is, if you get something, that means you are to give it to someone. St. Basil had a tough phrase about personal property. He said, that extra set of shoes, that extra piece of bread, that extra piece of clothing in your closet that you don't use, you have stolen from the poor. Tough words, especially in a capitalist society or in any society. But this was what inspired, because he read that. He read the words of St. Basil, who grew up in a Roman culture and did things diametrically opposed to many of the things in the Roman culture. You thought I was going to be done, and I will be. When he dies in November 1944, he's laid to rest, appointing in his place Shlipei, Yosef, Metropolitan, the rector of the seminary. The representative of the Soviet government at his funeral is Nikita Khrushchev, because they considered Sheptytsky a prisoner of the Tsar, who was released at the insistence of the provisional government, to be also a person who fought for social justice. When your enemies come to your funeral and they say you're not bad, and when our church, the Ukrainian Catholic Church, was liquidated at the Pseudo-Sobor in 1946, do you know one of their first acts at the liquidation of the Ukrainian Catholic Church, which became the largest persecuted faith group in the world until 1989, they had a panachida for Metropolitan Andrey Sheptytsky. He was a good man. He was a good human being. And I'm proud to be a member of his church, and I'm proud to be a member of the human family whom he showed how we should be as men and women. Thank you for your attention.
Дякую, Отче.